communication. So that is
Knowledge.
that's right. Yes. Knowledge is why we're here. Communication is why we're here today. And that is an enormously huge topic. So we are not in any way going to try to tackle every aspect of that here on our 70th episode. It's just, we would be here forever. And there's so much depth there. But we did just come off of an episode where we talked about how to get your ideas to stick, right? So we talked about how to implement them. So we wanted to talk about now how to communicate that mess in your head, how to get those ideas out, right? So putting our ideas out there can be scary, first off, but it can also be really hard to actually get them out. There are studies that they do all the time, and they continue to show that no one is born a great communicator. Sure, there are some people who they have those natural tendencies towards communication. But as a whole, communication is a learned skill, which doesn't mean that it's just acquired. I didn't use that word on purpose. It's learned in the sense that we have to put in effort and work. So we don't have this all figured out. Blake and I have not written the book on this yet. Just kidding. We have not written the book on this, but we have put together a process that is easy to follow and really will assist you in trying to get what's in your head out to your team.
Yeah, I have so many people that I work with or coach who one of the top things asked is, how do I become a better communicator? How do I speak well? How do I not fumble around on ideas I have? How do I communicate exactly what I'm thinking? And I'm always like, this is super easy. Here's how you do it. You practice a ton, just a ton, because there is no and there isn't this one way that you always do it. Even though we're going to talk about 5 steps, there is not one way that it's like, if you do this, it's foolproof. No, you've got to put in work. Okay. Like nobody is a good communicator. Okay. There are people who are better, but just in the art of, they are just the best. No, like it takes so much work, and every person, that's the thing, is communication's a two-way street here. It takes 2 different parties. You've got to know how the other people are dealing with the information you're giving. Okay. So that's why communication is not so cut and dry. You know, we've really got to deal with the issues of what someone else is actually thinking too. So, I still today don't feel like I'm even a great communicator. And I think that's why, just to hammer on what Pete said a minute ago, like being a good communicator is a learned thing, which should offer a lot of pressure off our shoulders, relief, because now we can learn, I can get better at this. I can put in this work and scale up. So, like I said, I've got a ton of people come in who are constantly like, how do we become better at this? And not say not say us. Stuff's going to happen. Okay. We're going to talk about that some. It's going to happen. You're not all of a sudden going to learn the right thing. Your brain is all of a sudden going to click. Like maybe your brain's been off, and you just once you get it, you read that book and you're like, oh my gosh, now click, great communicator. It would be great if that's how it worked, but it's not. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. We tend as communicators, and this is going to be kind of heavy here. We tend as communicators to put the responsibility of communication on the hearer instead of the speaker.
True.
We put the responsibility of, do you get what I said? Like, that's a terrible question, because their answer is going to be yes. And guess what? You don't know if they got what you said. So that's not great. So we have got to take off that responsibility off the hearer and put it back on ourselves. Okay. Because even though it takes 2 to communicate, and it does, and I'm not saying it's 100% on you, even though it takes 2 to communicate, we've got to get to a place where we put more responsibility on ourselves as the communicator, and become better speakers, become better communicators, because it's the mess in our head that we're trying to get out of our voice, out of, through speaking, through communicating, to land in their head. There is a very, very good reason why we call it the mess in your head.
Oh, yeah.
It's not clean. It's not pretty. So
No.
why do we think all of a sudden we're going to take this mess, we're going to communicate it, and it's going to become gold on the other side? It's not. Okay. We're going to have to go through a lot of reps, and we're going to have to put in the reps. And that's really what this is about, is putting in the work, making sure though we have the right steps in the process to put in the work. Okay. Because if all you think is, well, hey, Pete, I need you to go get milk. And you're like, all right, well, what milk? Hey, Pete, I need you to go get milk.
Right.
All right, Blake. Yeah, but what milk? Hey,
And
Pete,
how
are
much?
you freaking listening? I said I need you to go get milk.
Yes.
This sounds stupid, but this is a lot of our conversations.
That's exactly
Is
right.
we think if we speak louder, they're going to get it. It's like when you see someone who doesn't speak English and you speak English to them and they don't understand it. And so you speak louder and slower as if that was the problem.
Right.
It wasn't. Okay. So this is where we got to get better. Is you want to be a good communicator, learn that we're going to have to put in the reps. If you want to get away from the ums and the uhs, it takes time. Okay. You'll get away from saying things that work or don't work. You're going to say things that work. You're going to start learning, oh, hey, sometimes maybe communication takes, instead of saying exactly what it is, I'm going to give an analogy. I'm going to give a word picture. You're going to go through this. I would just say follow the process. Okay. Follow the process, grade yourself in the work. And when you can do that, you're going to get better. But you won't get better if you think all I have to do is read a book, or all I got to do is listen to a podcast. Yeah. That's passive action. That's okay. It's important. That stuff is good info. If you don't put in the work, you won't get the result.
Yeah, this is all the education, right? This is the part where you're learning, you're growing in the head knowledge, but you've got to put it into action. And that's really this process that we've come up here with, this 5 steps. That's what this is. This is the head knowledge. We're giving it to you now. You need to implement it. So, Blake, let's jump in. What's our first step here towards in this 5-step process?
Yeah. Step 1, think about the mess. Okay. Ooh. So I think it's Rene Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Before you communicate anything, think. Okay. Be a thinker. And we called this the 5 steps to communicate the mess. Okay. This is the mess. Well, be a good steward of the mess here. Okay. Think through it and start grouping ideas together. This is the first thing I do when I'm like going to communicate something to people. I'm like, all right, what are the big, like, what are the like similar things, so that I'm not like, hey, run this cable over here, and then over here, I want you to do this and this and this. Oh yeah, by that way, that cable over there, this, blah, blah, blah. And then like when you're everywhere and you're not able to kind of group things together to hand off a little easier, it's not going to land. Okay. Right. The next thing I'd say about thinking about the mess is you've got to get to the big idea quick. Okay. Convey the big idea first, especially when communicating. And not necessarily like communicating on a stage or something like that, but when you're communicating to people, I like, Andy Stanley talks about, it might be Michael Hyatt. One of those two. They talk about tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Okay. Yep. So like this whole idea of don't just come up and say, hey, first I need you to do this. Like, whoa. What am I doing? Like, where am I at? Yeah. We do this all the time. When we get comfortable with communicating with others, I'll come up to someone and be like, hey, I need this done and this done. And then they're like, what job are we talking about?
Right.
Like, where are we at?
Yes.
Where are we starting? Where are we ending? Like, what's happening? So when you can come up and you can say, hey, over at this project, there's this issue, and we're going to talk about that issue and just an idea of how we can fix that issue. You just set that up to be a lot cleaner. Okay. You just set up the understanding for someone to receive information and put it in the right context. If you don't start with what you're going to tell them, they're not going to know how to put stuff into place. Right. Hey, you can get away with this on a big stage speaking because people know what your topic's about already. So it's like you've already told them.
Yeah, it's usually on billboard as you walk in.
Exactly. But when you're coming up and communicating with someone face to face, we don't have that. So it's important to convey what the big idea is with this communication. What's the most important thing? Tell them right away. And then making sure at the end you recap that is the big thing. What is the big thing? You got to make sure that that's set. The next thing I would say is there is a difference as you're thinking through this mess between internal processing and external processing.
Oh
We're
yeah.
all different here. I tend to be an external processor, which means I say things out loud as I'm working through whether they will work, whether they won't work, whether I believe this thing, whether I don't believe this thing,
Yep.
and that's got me into trouble before because I've had people be like, "Well, you said this," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't believe it. I was working through it."
Right.
Okay. So, um, being an internal processor, being an external processor, that's
Yeah.
important because that part actually communicates things to people as well. Okay. Because as an external processor, I need to let my team or whoever I'm communicating with know I'm in a moment of external processing. Okay.
Yes.
I'm thinking through this. I'll say I'm thinking out loud here. Okay. Because that gives you permission to say things out loud, work through things, maybe get other feedback. I like that in kind of processing. But you got to be careful because some people will read your external processing on things you need to do. Okay.
Yes.
And I've had many people that I'm external processing. I'm like, oh, what if this happened? Or what if we had a process like this? What if we had a product like this? And it overwhelms people who
Hmm.
are like, oh my gosh, well, how am I going to build that when I've got this and I've got to do this?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I did not. That was not like an objective. Let's go and do this thing. I'm just external processing right now.
Yeah. I love that you said like you give them hints and clues into like, hey, I'm just thinking this through. We're just brainstorming. That's really crucial, especially for a guy like me who is an internal processor.
Mm,
And I would say too, the internal processing side can get dangerous too, because when an idea is presented and I suddenly go with my RBF, and I'm just staring at a wall and people think I'm not listening, I'm processing all the information. But that also can be dangerous too, because then people go, well, I don't know what you think. I don't know
mm,
what you're thinking. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm thinking either. I'm trying to bring it all into one place so that I can formulate what my beliefs and thoughts
yeah.
are on the process.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's great because you're right. That internal processing side, when people are more internal processing, it can piss people off because they think that they don't care. They think that they're
Right.
disengaged, and that's not fair either. So, but I think internal processors could say, "Hey, I'm going to think about this for a second. Give me just a second." And I have people over the years that I've been like, "Hey, are you just like not engaged here?" And then now they'll say, "Hey, let me think about this for a second." And that's the way we've grown in history and the ability to like work together. And so that's really important to just even communicate what kind of processor you are in those moments. Like, hey, I'm going to think through this for a second, or hey, I'm going to think about this out loud for a second. So that's a great thing. I think the other thing to think about is how does this person receive information?
Hmm.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's not just about your communication style, it's about matching your style with their receiving style.
Yes.
Okay. So are they an auditory receiver of information? Are they a visual receiver of information? Are they more like show me step by step kind of thing? Or a hey, I need to get my hands on this. Can you
Yeah.
show me with putting hands on kind of thing? Because some people are visual in the nature that you could draw it and they get it, and other people they got to put their hands on it and oh, now I get it. And the electricity goes through this, and I'm obviously electrically speaking here. But how people receive information is just as much a responsibility of the communicator to know, am I going to give them the right information?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I going to give them the right food? Like think about it if they were allergic to peanuts and you brought peanuts and gave it to them, they would be like, "This isn't good because I don't receive it well, and this is like I'm overwhelmed." And now like, okay, well, make sure that you're not giving them something that they're allergic to. Give them the
Yeah.
thing that they need. We take care there. We need to take care in the communicating side too. And just the last part to this, as you're thinking about the mess and how you're going to bring this information to them, emotional intelligence is so important. And
Mhm.
emotional intelligence being that skill that is, refers to like someone's ability to understand, process, and express someone's feelings and to be able to recognize that in somebody else. Okay. And how to engage them with the feelings that they're experiencing too. Okay. So, like, are they even in a place to receive the information? Like that's hard sometimes, but the more you can figure that out quick and help them get to a place that they can receive information, you're going to be able then to take that mess that you have and pass it along. So, yeah, that's what I'd say the first step is. Think about the mess, think about how you're going to convey this information.
I love that. I love it. So second step here, trying to stay real practical, is it's say it, right?
Mm,
And when you do, this is also key. Keep it simple. You
mhm.
don't want to blow them up with all these big words. And we'll talk about that serum more in a second, but make sure that your communication to them initially is simple.
Mm.
You I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. No, that's good. And you're right. I mean, I think all the time that the best communication is done at a fifth grade level. Okay. Fifth grade reading level is where you want to be. Now, whether you like this or not, even I think that there's a ton of science backing this up, even history backing this up, that the best communicators in history kept it very simple. Okay. They didn't use massive words. And this is what you might not like, but even Trump versus Clinton. Okay. Clinton gave her speeches at a 12th grade reading level. Okay. It makes in our logical minds, we're like, yeah, that's fine. That's
That
easy.
makes
Like,
sense.
what's the big deal? Like, we all got past, you have to be past 12th grade to vote usually anyway. So what's the big deal? Our brains have to work a lot harder to understand and follow someone.
Yeah.
And it makes that message harder. Okay, it makes that message harder to receive. And so our non-thinking brains want simple. And when they understand simple, it clicks.
Yeah.
And so Trump was at like a 5th or 6th grade reading level. So I would just say keep it simple. It's not about you, it's about them. So when you say it, just keep it. I agree. Keep it simple.
Just keep it simple. Yeah. And make sure you're giving context,
Mm.
right? If it's needed, like you said earlier, you're not going to want to show up. You don't have a billboard on your back that says, this is the topic, right?
Yeah, right.
You're going to walk up to somebody and you need to give that context of what you're going to say as you say it. And then make sure you're giving specifics too, or explanations on specifics. For example, Blake, if you were to speak to me about some in-depth electrical problem, it would be very different than if you were to talk to our field supervisor, Sean,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
The level of explanation on specifics would be much higher with me than it would be with Sean, because you have a mutual understanding around the language that's spoken
Mhm.
around electrical. I don't. I
Yeah.
don't have that backup or that background.
Mhm.
So it's important to know who your audience is as you say this too, and what their backgrounds are.
Yeah, that
If you're
tribal knowledge, more or less. A lot of times we have
Yep,
tribal knowledge and understanding that there's a certain level you don't have to explain things, but
right.
there is a certain level you do have to explain things.
And you need to know where that threshold is. You've got
Mhm.
to know that. And then make sure too, when you're saying it, this is important, and I think is left off of a lot of things. There is, you say things more than just with your voice or
Mhm.
with your words, right? There's verbal, which is what we're doing right now, and there's nonverbal, which is the communication that we do with our body,
Mhm.
the way that we're engaged with the listeners, with the audience, the way that we're trying to hold their attention. All of those things is communication. And then the same thing too goes for your inflection. I could say all of this in a monotone and it gets super boring, or I could change my inflection up and now I'm communicating an idea. I'm communicating conviction. I'm communicating purpose, and all these things are coming through with the way that I'm speaking, the intonation of my voice, and my body language.
Yeah.
So you don't just say it with your words and with your voice. You say it with your body. You say it with your intonation as well. So
And I
that's
think as well though on that, but like to keep on this topic just
yeah.
for a second, there is also this like a listener and a speaker when they have body language that looks like if I'm like this, like ready to go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Got
You
it.
don't want to be here.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like that's saying something too. And so, like, if you're not engaged in how you're saying it, they're not engaged in how they're receiving it, keeping an eye on those things and being able to say, hey, where are you going? We're going to talk
Yeah,
about this. Like, let's dig in a little bit.
I love that.
Um, yeah. So that's pretty important too when it comes to saying it.
The same
Uh,
thing is true
Go
real
ahead.
quick too with
Yeah.
I think about this when I'm in meetings. The way that I sit conveys a certain attitude or
Mm,
idea. If I'm sitting back like this, I am most likely not engaged, or I'm thinking about something else that's somewhat related, but I'm not listening to what's being said.
Right.
And that's terrible. People read that and they understand that more than you think. We pick up on those little cues very quickly and very easily.
Yeah.
So that's number 2, say it and keep
Yeah.
it simple.
That's good. Number 3 is gauge how it landed. Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
we don't tend to do this because we already did our job. We've already done our due diligence of saying information. If that's what you think communication is, you're missing it. Okay, so we talked about thinking about the mess before you say it, then you say it, then you need to gauge how it landed. Okay, did they understand it? If you say, okay, this is, and I'm guilty of this, Pete's guilty of this, you're guilty of this. Okay. I don't even know who you are specifically hearing this, but you are guilty of this too. If you say, does that make sense? Do you understand? That is a lazy, rushed, quick way to make sure that you are not responsible.
Yep.
Not that they understood it. It's to gauge whether that you are responsible for the next step or not. Okay, so instead, we need to ask better questions. Again, I need to ask better questions. I'm even saying that out loud. I feel the hypocrite because I say those things all the time. And I've got to
Same.
stop. I got to stay away from yes and no questions. And I need to say, hey, tell me exactly what you think I said to make sure because
Yep.
and you know what? You want to give yourself like not seeming like a dick by saying that. Maybe you say, you know what? Hey, I'm trying to get better at communicating. Can you tell me what I just said?
That's good.
Like, hey, tell me what I said because I'm kind of want to make sure I'm getting better here. What did I miss? And then you'll start picking up on areas that you had nuanced thinking, kind of like Pete was talking about, where you are just assuming things that they
Mhm.
do not assume because they're not at the same capacity that you are in that thinking. Okay, so
Right.
gauge how it landed. Ask them to back brief you, especially if you're doing a step by step things. Okay, we usually can only remember about 3 to 5 things at a time. So if you give someone 12, fat chance unless they wrote it down. Okay, so if they
Right.
didn't write it down, either one, encourage them to write it down, or two, have them back brief you. Okay, but I'd still say have them back brief you anyway, which back
Yeah.
briefing is the act of saying, okay, tell me what I told you. Tell me what you're going to do. Show me how this is going to happen. And then they'll back brief you on that. So it's really important to make sure you know that it landed well before you go on from that point.
Yeah, and I love you, the way
I
that
love
you
you
said
too.
I love you too. I know I started that out. Um, when you were saying the back brief part about, if you give them 5 step or you give them 3 steps, or if you give them 12 steps, this is another call back. If you've given them 12 steps,
Mhm.
maybe you need to go back and rethink how you said it. Maybe you need to simplify it a little bit more. Now, there
Mhm.
are technical processes that involve multiple steps,
Yeah.
but maybe you need to look back and say, okay, maybe I've given you too much or I've been too scattered. It's a really good callback for you at that point to go, hang on, back up, slow down, timeout. Let's go
Mhm.
back to here. And that's a good place for us to move to our fourth one, which is recap, right? You want to summarize the feedback that you're getting from the individual or the team that you're speaking with and the idea and combine them together. So, what I'm hearing is XYZ, or it sounds like we want to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that correct? Or did I have that right? Or one that I've started asking lately is, will that work? Or how will this not work? I used that yesterday for a process we were creating. Okay, how is this not going to work?
Yeah, it's good.
How is this going to break? What
Mm.
are the pieces or areas that are going to not work properly? Rather than just saying, this is what I'm hearing, because then you're also asking for feedback. You're not
Yeah.
asking for them to just get quiet and listen like this,
Mm.
which means they're not listening.
Yeah.
And then the last piece of this, once you've recapped, which is number 4, you move to number 5, which is going to be get buy-in,
Mm.
right? You have to get them to agree to where you're going with this. You have to get them to agree that all the things that we've communicated about up to this point, they understand, they accept, and they're willing to move forward.
Yeah.
So without that buy-in, you're not going to move forward. You're going to get to 90% and it's just going to drop dead right there because Nobody is saying, yeah, this sounds like a really good idea. I like where we're headed. I see the action steps. I have taken ownership of my to-dos. Let's move this thing forward.
Right. Yeah.
What were we going to say? Like,
no, that's spot on. I like it.
And then without agreement of what's going on and what's being stated, you're not going to have buy-in. So don't forget that part either. Get the agreement. That's the recap portion. Get the agreement, then get your buy-in. Then you can move forward with whatever the idea or process here is.
Yeah. Those 5 steps, and I keep saying them. Pete's continuing to say them because they're just helpful to think about the mess, say it, gauge how it landed, recap, and get buy-in. Saying those things over and over, getting that process down. Like I said in the beginning, getting the reps. Okay. Yeah. Getting the reps, putting in the reps. That's how you grow. Okay. It's not just by reading a book and you got it. Having said that, I do think reading books and getting ideas, listening to podcasts are super helpful.
Absolutely.
I probably read more books on communication than I do strictly on business. Because it doesn't matter how good you are in business. If you can't communicate, it doesn't matter. And so being a good communicator, making sure people understand and can do the thing that you're hoping to have happen, or can bring a good result to what it is that's inside your head. It's just not going to happen if you don't have that good communication.
Yeah.
So anyway, having said that,
before you jump into that, you made me think of something, and I'll let you get to these books, I promise. But I was reading a statistic that stated that effective communication within business is the number one driver of economic successfulness. Like, it is not negotiable. You must be able to communicate well if you want to be successful in the financial aspect. It's an absolute driver in that.
Gosh, yeah. So true. No, yeah. So having said all that, here are some books, because I'm a big book guy, and these have helped me a ton. So the first book is, and I don't have the authors here, but check them out. Speak So Your Audience Will Listen. Fantastic book for getting to the point of why you're saying things. There's another one called Communicating for a Change. I believe that's Andy Stanley. It's more parable in nature, and I really like that book. Improve Your Conversations. Another great book. Speak with No Fear. That's crazy. Nobody's afraid to speak. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Another great one that's been around since, I think, like the 40s, or
it's been around a while.
Yeah, it's a long one. And then the last one, Building a Story Brand. It's super good, which is business focused and brand focused. But again, all of this stuff that we're talking about in business has everything to do with communicating. And so to become a good leader, this whole Ridgeline Leadership podcast is about becoming a better leader. Yeah. And when I get asked so many times, how do I become a better communicator? Put in the work, put in the reps, follow these types of processes. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then go on to the next one. That's totally fine. But don't stop growing in your communication.
Yeah, absolutely. We all communicate every single day. I don't think we all think about that, how much communication we do. However, all of us are not great at getting what's in our head out in front of people. So as you're growing in this communication skills, as you're growing as a leader, whether in your family or in your organization, whatever it may be, remember the 5 steps. We've hit it a lot, but I'm going to hit it one more time. Think about the mess. Say it. Remember to keep it simple. Gauge how it landed. Recap. Get buy-in. I think it's noteworthy to say, too, that most people, when it comes to communication, stop at step number 2. And I think 3, 4, and 5, putting in the reps there is what's going to move you from a communicator to a great communicator. Those things will push you to that level. Check out those books. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week on the Ridgeline Leadership Podcast. See you guys next time.